family murdered without reason. A newborn beaten moments after taking her first breath. A killer who lingered, who cleaned, who arranged the bodies with unsettling care, and then vanished into the quiet Illinois night without leaving a trace. This case is not just brutal, it is unnatural. This is the story of the Dardeen family, and one of the most disturbing unsolved murders in American history. In the late autumn of 1987, in the quiet rural stretch of southern Illinois, the town of Ina existed in the kind of silence found only in small, isolated communities. A scattering of mobile homes, long stretches of farmland, a two-lane road cutting through the flat fields. A place where people left their doors unlocked and where everyone knew what time their neighbors got home from work. It was the kind of place that appeared peaceful on the outside. But beneath that calm exterior, something darker had been taking shape. Something that frightened even the most grounded residents. Something that made parents sleep with shotguns beside their beds. Over the previous 2 years, Jefferson County, the county that Ina sits inside, had recorded more than 15 homicides. That number was nearly unheard of for the area. Deaths were scattered, brutal, and unpredictable. For the people who lived there, it felt as if something evil had begun to creep into their farmland. Among those growing uneasy was a young father named Russell Keith Dardeen. Keith was 29, a quiet man, reserved, responsible. He worked as a plant operator for the Rend Lake Water Conservancy District, a job he performed with the kind of reliability that made missed shifts almost unthinkable. He lived in a modest mobile home just outside Ina with his wife, Elaine, age 30, and their 2-year-old son, Peter. Elaine was 8 months pregnant with their second child, a baby they had lovingly chosen names for, Ian if a boy, Casey if a girl. To the outside world, the Dardeens looked like one of the many simple, hard-working families that made up the region. Elaine worked at an office supply store on Sundays. She played piano at their small Baptist church, while Keith sang in the choir. They were known as kind, gentle people, active in their church, friendly with neighbors. But Keith was worried, deeply worried. In conversations with his mother, Joanne, he confided that he no longer felt safe in Ina. The violence, the murders, the fear that kept sweeping through the community. It didn't feel like the place he once trusted. He told her plainly that he regretted ever moving there. He planned to leave, even if it meant quitting his job, even if it meant starting over. He wanted his family far away from this place. But fate did not give him the chance before the Dardeens could move, before they could pack their belongings, before they could welcome their new baby into the world. Something far more horrific than anything Keith had feared came to their door, and it came without warning. On the morning of November 18th, 1987, Keith did not show up for work. Not only that, he didn't call in. He didn't answer his phone. He didn't leave a message. For someone else, this might have raised mild concern. For Keith, it set off alarm bells. His supervisor tried calling his home, no answer. He contacted Keith's parents. They hadn't heard from him either. Hours passed. Silence. Just silence. By the evening, concern had grown into fear. Keith's father, Don, agreed to meet deputies at the mobile home. He brought a spare key. He expected maybe a medical emergency, a broken-down car, something minor. But the moment the door was unlocked, the illusion of normalcy collapsed. Inside the trailer, the atmosphere was strange, unnaturally still, lights off. No voices, no crying child, no movement at all. The officers moved deeper into the home, and in the bedroom, the horror revealed itself. There on the bed were the bodies of Elaine, Peter, and a newborn baby girl. All three had been beaten to death. Elaine had been bound and gagged. She had been beaten so violently that she went into labor, giving birth during the attack. The newborn survived only moments before the killer beat her as well. The murder weapon was discovered nearby, a baseball bat Keith had given his son for his most recent birthday. But the scene was even more chilling than the brutality itself. The bodies had been tucked into bed, arranged, positioned carefully, almost methodically, as if the killer wanted them to appear quiet, as if nothing had happened at all. Keith was nowhere to be found. His red Plymouth car was missing, and given the severity of the scene, the initial assumption was grim. Authorities suspected Keith had murdered his family and fled, but that theory lasted less than 24 hours. The following day, a group of hunters found Keith's body in a wheat field not far from his home. He had been shot 3 times. His genitals had been severed. He had been killed within an hour of his family. Minutes later, his car was found parked outside a nearby police station. Blood splattered throughout its interior. The truth was unmistakable. This wasn't a domestic crime. This wasn't an argument gone wrong. This wasn't a robbery. This was something far more disturbing. And the killer, or killers, had vanished into the fields. With 4 members of a family brutally murdered, law enforcement launched the largest investigation Southern Illinois had seen in years. 30 detectives worked full-time. Over 100 people were interviewed. Every possible connection was explored. Yet the more investigators examined the crime, the less sense it made first. There was no forced entry, no broken doors, no smashed windows. Someone either knocked or was invited in. Second, nothing was stolen. Not the VCR, not jewelry, not cash. Even a portable camera remained untouched. Third, Elaine had not been sexually assaulted. There was no evidence of sexual motive, no signs of an attack of that nature. Fourth, the scene had been cleaned, wiped down, tidied. The killer had taken their time, long enough to remove certain traces, long enough to arrange the bodies, long enough to walk away calmly. This was not hurried work. This was deliberate. Investigators struggled to find a motive. The Dardeens had no known enemies. There were no affairs, no debts, no illegal connections. A small amount of marijuana was found in the home, but authorities believed it could have belonged to the killer, not the family. The Dardeens were almost painfully ordinary good people, church-going, hardworking, loved by everyone who knew them. So why had they been selected for a level of violence rarely seen in the region? The public, desperate for answers, turned to rumors. Stories spread rapidly. Some believed it was the work of Satanists, a theory amplified by fear and the satanic panic sweeping through America at the time, the mutilation, the brutality, the newborn baby. Some thought it must have been a ritual killing, but experts dismissed that immediately. There were no symbols, no ritual markings, nothing consistent with cult activity. Others believed it was a revenge killing, perhaps against Keith, perhaps against Elaine, but again, nothing in their lives supported that idea. Some theorized the family had been targeted by mistaken identity. Maybe the killer thought they were someone else. Still others believed it might have been a random act of extreme violence. Possible, but unusual for how personal and prolonged the attack had been. The FBI assisted. Profilers reviewed the case. Their analysis was inconclusive. The crime didn't match patterns of serial killers, but it also didn't match patterns of personal crimes. It was anomalous, unpredictable, baffling, and for the residents of Southern Illinois, that was the most terrifying part. If there was no motive, if the family had done nothing wrong, if the killer could simply appear and slaughter 4 innocent people without reason, then it meant it could happen to anyone. That fear took hold of the community like a sickness. People began arming themselves, sleeping in shifts, locking children inside at night. By winter, the Dardeen murders had cast a shadow over the region so deep that some residents refused to travel alone after dark. Paranoia became the new normal, and despite all the investigators' efforts, the case only grew colder. It wasn't until the early 2000s, more than a decade after the murders, that the case took an unexpected turn. Convicted serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells, awaiting execution in Texas, began confessing to murders across the country. He claimed he had killed more than 20 victims. Some of his stories were confirmed, others were not. When he learned about the Dardeen case, he told investigators it was his work. He claimed he had met Keith at a truck stop, claimed Keith invited him home for dinner, claimed he later murdered the entire family. But almost immediately, problems appeared in his story. He described killings that didn't match the autopsy. He misremembered the position of Elaine's body, first getting it completely wrong, then correcting himself after investigators challenged him. He incorrectly described details of Keith's death, things that hadn't been released publicly.
That drug, I'm after that drug again. I don't have a on and off switch. I'm just after that drug. I'm after that feeling.
I wonder if you could just tell me what happened as you were killing her. Did she give birth to a baby?
You know, you push and you love.
I'm sorry.
Let's not get into blood and guts, because that's what you're trying to get into.
His motive shifted each time he spoke. At one point, he claimed Keith had made a sexual advance on him, but those who knew Keith found this impossible to believe. This was the same man who wouldn't let a young woman into his home to use the phone because he was afraid for his family's safety. Investigators suspected Sells might simply be taking credit for a notorious case to inflate his reputation, something serial killers often do. And there was another barrier. Texas law would not allow Sells to leave the state to walk investigators through the crime scene in Illinois. Without that, there was no way to verify his claims. By 2014, when Sells was executed, even Joanne Dardeen, who had once believed he might be responsible, had changed her mind. And so, with Sells eliminated as a reliable suspect, the case returned to its cold, empty silence. To this day, the mysteries remain. Why was there no forced entry? Why were the murders so brutally personal, yet so methodical? Why was Keith taken from the home, mutilated, and left in a field? Why was the car abandoned outside a police station? Why was nothing stolen? And how could someone commit a quadruple murder in a small rural area without being seen, heard, or remembered? Every question leads only to more questions. Every theory collapses under scrutiny. And every year that passes widens the gap between the truth and the silence left behind. Nearly 4 decades have passed since the murders of the Dardeen family. The mobile home is gone. The fields have been plowed and replanted. Most of the investigators have retired, but the horror of what happened has never left southern Illinois. The Dardeen murders remain one of the most baffling and most disturbing unsolved crimes in American history. A family murdered without motive, a killer who left no trace, a town plunged into fear, a case that defied profiling, logic, and reason. Keith, Elaine, Peter, and their newborn daughter were buried together. 4 lives extinguished in a single night. 4 innocent people whose final moments were filled with fear and violence no one can truly imagine. For the people who knew them, especially Joanne Dardeen, the pain never faded. She spent years calling detectives, gathering signatures, begging television networks to share the story, pleading for answers that would never come. She wanted justice. She wanted truth. She wanted closure, but she received none. Today, the case stands frozen in time, a haunting reminder that even the most peaceful places can be shattered by inexplicable evil. And until someone comes forward, until evidence emerges, until the mystery breaks, the question remains suspended in the air. Who murdered the Dardeen family? And why? No one knows, and the silence is the most terrifying part. If you want more deep, gripping, unsettling, true crime cases, subscribe to Dark Files. Share this video so the story reaches as many people as possible, and leave a comment with your thoughts and theories.